deals and the most awesome giveaways on sensory toys, educational tools, and kid products all in one spot. This is Sensory Deal Live. Hey y'all, Angela here. Welcome to Sensory Deal, the show that's all about exploring the world of sensory products to help you and your kiddos live your best life. We're doing things a bit differently today, and I think you'll enjoy today's discussion. For families of people on the spectrum and people who work with those on the spectrum, we're quite familiar with triggers. So triggers are cues and signal potential triggers are cues that send potential threats. It gives us cues to danger and makes us feel antsy and withdrawn. For people on the spectrum, kids with autism, for example, triggers are cues that can potentially start a meltdown. For this can come from a form of like flashing lights, loud sounds, and itchy shirt tags. For adults, it can be an awkward social interaction, rejection, and the list can go on. As parents, therapists, and individuals, we are trained to identify and catch these triggers. But for today's episode, we want to focus on the opposite of the triggers, the glimmers. I will be sitting with some familiar faces, and we will talk about what glimmers are and how this can help, whether or not you're on the spectrum. But before I introduce them, I'd like to say hello to all y'all, the viewers. Hey, y'all, we are so glad you're here. Please make sure if you have any questions or any comments to write them down and let us know because we'd love to hear from you guys. Now, joining me today is Jason Shea, the CEO of Lackey Kid, a father of an autistic genius, and most of you might not know, but he is also ADHD. We also have Parker Lynch of Hedgehog Health, which is the brains behind the Hoglet fidget computer mouse. He's also an educator and also has ADHD. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here.
Hi, Christina. I see a comment. She says, I am looking forward to this. We are so happy you're here. So, for our first question, what are your experiences with triggers?
I guess I'll go first. So some of my big triggers, I would say, are I also, in addition to having ADHD, I have social anxiety disorder. So sometimes, just by nature of what I do, right, I need to get in front of people for business, and I need to have important conversations, whether that's at a conference or with like hundreds of people, or kind of a more intimate thing. But either way, when I'm around a lot of people, I'll have I do get anxious. So that's certainly a trigger for me. That's kind of like always been there. It's one of my main ones.
Jason, do you have any trigger experiences you may have had?
I think it's maybe performing under pressure. I think there's different type of course, there's sensory trigger, but there's also emotional trigger. I think I tend to get triggered when I'm really trying to fight against a deadline, but I'm like behind, and that really stressed me out. Like that usually was one of my bigger trigger. So
that's definitely a good one. Mine is I'm kind of like you, Parker. I am very guess recluse nowadays. I get shy at first, of course. Me being on here, you would not know, but I don't like big crowds. I get really anxious and I have high anxiety. So that's one thing. Loud sounds. If I get overstimulated noise wise, that triggers me, and I just So I definitely have been there with those. And what are some of your personal triggers growing up? Do you both have anything that you guys might remember growing up that you knew always triggered you?
Yeah, I mean, let's see, loud noises. I remember like there's a story my mom told me. I don't even remember this, but like when I was really young, I was at a parade, and there was like a fire truck that was at the parade making a ton of noise, and I guess I was just totally freaking out during that time. I still, I'm not super fond of loud noises, so I like look back to that as a potential trigger, for that.
Very
Yeah,
true. I definitely been there with that one. Jason?
I think my trigger is more on certain type of animal, like a side trigger. So because I have some small episode with a particular type of dog in my
Oh,
childhood, so that can trigger some emotional, I guess, flashback. So
yes, for
yeah.
sure. I definitely had an experience where, there was a dog by the fence and he ran up to me barking, and I was pretty close to the fence and didn't know him. So then that was a trigger. It, initiated that fright and flight mode.
Mhm.
Let's see. Christina says, someone yelling at me. Yes, someone yelling at you is definitely a trigger. I completely agree with you on that one. Um, my personal triggers growing up, I would say my stresses were kind of like deadlines and stuff. I felt like I was masking a lot. For people that don't know what masking is, it's you try to put a front and you try to act like something you're not. So I wasn't trying to be fake, but I knew people wanted me to be a certain way. So I tried to mask and try to put myself in that situation and be that person for people. I'm more of a people pleaser.
Mhm.
So I remember growing up, always I knew I needed to get the good grades. I knew I had to perform at a certain level for my family. So that was one of those triggers growing up, was like perfectionist. I was trying to be that perfectionist person for them. The next question is, what are glimmers? So can you just describe a little bit of what you think a glimmer is and what glimmers are?
Yeah, for me, I think glimmers are well, I think for everyone they're different. For some examples of glimmers are something that makes you feel better. When you're having that when you're having that triggering situation, right? Like sometimes it's like as simple as like petting your dog, like that could be a glimmer. Being in the sun, gardening. For me, it's like fidgeting, like makes me focus better and get over whatever trigger I might have during that moment. So really, like in my opinion, like it's totally different for everyone, right? Some people may have similar glimmers, but I think we're all different in that fact.
Yeah, and what I want to add is like you can actually use sensory glimmer can be a helpful tool to try to tap into certain type of emotion or memory in like a therapy setting or even self reflections. Because I do a lot of like Tony Robbins training. That's one thing he mentioned about in his training is like how can you create a positive anchor, like an emotional anchor. So when you feel very depressed or you don't feel like working or you don't like to work on the business, you can associate with a strong emotion, like a very positive, like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna make it happen. You associated to either a gesture or certain pose you do, or then you can actually trigger yourself later when you need that additional motivations. So that could be one. That's a little bit. This is more a little bit more advanced on like almost kind of
The adult
conditioning
side.
yourself. Yeah, conditioning yourself to get up and go to work almost. So Tony Robbins did a very good job on explaining how exactly he will like coach people how to do that, and that could be a good tool. But I think generally just by paying attention to different sensory experiences that trigger your emotional responses, like sometimes I'll use different essential oils, for example. Like if I need to get into like a focus stage, for example, as there's a deadline I'm trying to hit, and I'll use some kind of like essential oil to get me back into that focus state. That could be one of the strategy that people can consider. So
Aromatherapy is actually a really good one. I know lavender, peppermint, those type of things are very soothing. There's also like a perfume that say your mother or grandmother wore, and you smell that could be a good trigger, a good glimmer. For me, glimmers are a way to help, say the meltdown is starting. It helps transition and self-regulates the child. So it helps them feel more grounded and feel more in that safe zone, because with the triggers, we just want to go fight or flight. We want to either run away or we want to, defend ourselves or what have you. So the glimmers are the opposite. So what they do is the glimmers help transition from that trigger mode into a calming state and keeps you more grounded. So to me, that's how that is. Definitely, like Parker was saying, with gardening, going to the beach, just sitting out in the sun. My son did this really cute thing the other day while I was doing the research on glimmers and stuff, and he was just staring out his window one morning, and I let it I just watched him because like I was reading about all this, and he was like, "Mom, the birds are so loud." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, we got a lot of birds outside." And he was just stood there listening to the birds chirping, just watching outside the window in our backyard. So, I mean, to me, that was like his little shot of glimmer, that morning, right before everything started. Now for Parker, when and how did you learn about glimmers? Because glimmers, this whole topic came up with you. You sent Jason and Jamie a image and an article, and everyone loved it. So that's you were the whole idea of this topic tonight.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad I could bring that topic to the public. It's a really cool, I guess, a way to frame, I guess, something that we probably all have known about before, right? Like, you hear people referring to, like, and this kind of goes back to what Jason was saying, like going to your happy place, or thinking about something that makes you feel good. That's something that a lot of us do often. I mean, like, the other day I was on an airplane. There was a bunch of turbulence. I kind of, I kind of went to a different place mentally to try to just forget about it, or, get my focus elsewhere. So, really, I think it's glimmers. The term is recent, has been like coined recently, as far as I'm aware of. Like, I think it's like a new way of saying something that we've all kind of known about since day one, right? Like as a child, like, hey, this is, maybe you're not going to call it a trigger, but something's really bothering you. And like you mentioned, like that could be something totally different for a different person. Like, my glimmer might be actually someone else's trigger, right? The fact that I like to fidget, and some people who are averse to having textures touching their skin, that could be like someone else's total trigger. But yeah, like, I guess a long way of saying it, I think it's something I've kind of known about forever. But a couple of recent articles I shared on LinkedIn recently, and I'm trying to remember the author of it, but I guess you can check out my LinkedIn, Parker Lynch, to find that article. That's like the most recent I've heard about glimmers. So I think it's a cool term, and I really like it. I think it also gives a good visual kind of like sight to that word.
Yes, I completely agree. Because, like, say for me, horse therapy, equine therapy was really big for me. And all it is you go and, you help with taking care of the horse. So you brush the horse, you talk to a counselor, you might get lucky and get on the horse and get to ride a horse, So for me, that was something that was therapeutic. But for someone else, they could be like, I don't want to be near that big, tall thing. It's going to smash me, So I agree. There some glimmers can end up being triggers for someone else. Christina wrote, sorry, one second. When I hear an inspirational music or my student does something amazing, like the other day, a nonverbal student said, "I love you," clearly and under his breath. Aw, those are awesome. I agree. Those are glimmers. Yes. Now, what are you've already mentioned some of these because of the fidgeting. What are other personal glimmers do you have? Because, of course, fidget tools are awesome. I know I use I use my little Hoglet keychain that is on my keys. Yes, I have one, and I had to buy a second round because my kids lost one, and I was like, we got to have one for everybody, you know. So I mean, fidget tools are huge. But what else do you think personally you might have?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually using mine right now because I'm being a little bit nervous answering questions, and another great thing is like having this in my pocket when I am conversing with a bunch of people at an event, and I have this attached to my keys. I do find myself like in my pocket. I am literally using this thing, and it's helping me focus and stay calm. So, um, other ways to sorry, the question was what other
Your
ways?
personal glimmers. Yeah,
Oh,
your personal glimmers.
personal glimmers for me. Yeah, but as I mentioned, fidgeting, petting my dog like definitely calms me down. I know that's kind of like one of the older tricks in the book for those of us who have pets, right? It's like your pet kind of brings you back to your happy place. I love my dog. He makes me feel super relaxed. Like if I'm having a really rough moment, I need to calm down. Um, let's see. Another one is sometimes I'll just go out and like dribble the basketball, take a couple shots like in my backyard at the hoop, and usually feel a little bit better. Things like that. I kind of like so things involving motion are big for me. Being more of a kinesthetic person, I like actions like that. So when I need to really kind of chill out, like those are some things I'll do.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Jason, how about you? Do you have any personal glimmers off the top of your head?
I think for me, it's really music is a big one. I have a certain type of like focused music I'll listen to if I need to be into doing some kind of deep work. For example, doing financial projections, which is you require a lot of mental energy. And I do agree with Parker's mention earlier. Like I also need to get out there, like exercising. I feel like this is critical, not just for people that's neurotypical, but especially people is either on the spectrum or have other neural needs. Having that regular exercising is huge, at least for me personally. This is actually one of the new habits I'm trying to install in myself this year. So right now I wake up at 4:30 a.m. every single morning, and I get ready and go to the gym from 5 a.m. to 5:30. Just work out or sometimes ride on a bike, and I'm also taking some boxing lesson. But at the end of the day, just trying to make sure I'm active and make sure I can at least sweat a little bit, because I think maybe Parker can also relate to this, because we are also like internet entrepreneur. We stay in front of the computer all day. And
Yes.
we don't really exercise. We just sit in front of a computer all day, every day. And I don't even get out of the house until unless I need to go buy some lunch. But I don't really get out of the house. So yeah, so having that like regular exercise, I feel like that's really important. But not just for adult, but that's the same situation for the kids nowadays, because if you look at the school schedule, they sit on their butt all day, every day. I mean, there's some PEs, but not definitely not enough physical activities that the kids really need to be doing on a regular basis in order to make sure their body is healthy, but also their mind is also healthy. So.
I definitely agree with the exercise. My personal glimmers are on the weekends. I really like to try to work in the garden. We've got this little tiny garden, so it's not big or anything, but it's where my husband will, watch the kids and let me kind of zen out for a little bit. And I'm outside, so I get that, natural sunlight instead of being stuck in a house all day with the kids. So kind of like you guys are stuck at a computer desk. I'm stuck helping the kids at home inside. I mean, of course, we try to go out, when we take breaks, but most of the time it's inside. Music is another big one. Growing up, that was always my escape. I was actually a choir child through all grade school. Yeah, we sang at Disney Candlelight a few times, my high
Oh.
school. So it, music is big. I used to try to play piano and play guitar, but singing really came more natural to me than an instrument. Let's see, what else do I have? I would say not bike riding, but I like taking walks. So it does kind of have to do with exercise, but I'm not hardcore exercising.
Yeah.
It's more the chillax way.
Yeah.
So light exercise, I guess you could say, or just dance with my kids. It's a computer game where the kids get to pick their games and pick music, and then we just bust a move and see who wins. The kids love to kick my booty in it. Now, Jason, what are some of your kids' glimmers? Because I know we've been talking about us as adults, but I know that as parents and educators, we can see our child's glimmers sometimes when we pay attention, of course, but we can notice their glimmers and see what will help transition them out of a possible meltdown.
I think for him, it's gonna be playing with his Pokemon toy. That's kind of like his kind of a way to escape. And I think in the previous episode when we were talking about the countdown corner, he turned it into a Pokemon corner with a whole bunch of Pokemon. But I think at least for my son, that's something that's for him is kind of like a escape, or at least when he's getting stressed out, he will just go play with his. He have like a lot of Pokemon stuff, like stuff animal. So that's just the way that I think he will just play with it. I think that's combination of the sight and also touch, I guess. That I think that's helping him out. And one thing we have been kind of introducing to him before he go to bed is trying different kind of cream. We have been using like magnesium creams to help him kind of calm down and relax before sleep, and that's one thing that he still use to this date. And of course, it depends on the kids. Each kid is a little bit different. I don't know how does your kid handle this the emotional stress for you, Angela? So.
Yeah, like everyone has been saying, all kids are different. So for say my 2-year-old, if he's starting to have a meltdown, if I can get some bubbles out and just blow some bubbles or get the bubble machine out, he will forget about any care in the world. Any care. He has also discovered kinetic sand, so of course my kitchen is all blue. But it keeps him keeps him active. He's working with his hands, so it's helping with that OT early. And it just keeps him calm and it keeps him happy. For Skylar, my 6-year-old, he's turning 7 at the end of this month. His big thing is the balance ball. Like, no kidding, the Lackey Kid balance ball. He will sit there for hours and just get all that energy out and stare at the TV and then bounce. And when he's in school, if he's having problems concentrating, that's the ball. That is his chair. So that's a big one. He does sometimes need more direction. So say fidget wise, he does use the marble maze and stuff, like if we were out at a restaurant. But when it comes to school, the balance ball is his big thing. I just noticed he loves to stare outside. He loves to go swimming. So swimming is big for him, which that helps with the exercise too. They'll be out there for hours. Even if it's cold, they'll have blue lips and they're still like, "No, mommy, I'm not cold." I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and for our house, we also. Oh, let me. Sorry, the screen is kind of weird. Let me make it. So, we also have the hedgehog computer mouse in our computer room. So when my son is doing any kind of homework, we do use that as well. So Angela also have one, 5 different colors. So yeah, so that's also another, I guess, tool. Of course, something you can experiment with your kids. And like Angela was mentioning, I actually have this keychain on my car key as well. So I use it for my car key. So kind of carry that around. So it's just a little bit like different kind of small tool. I guess we can kind of incorporate into the daily life and see what is any thing we can use to help with this kind of like daily stress, or when you feel anxious. Like that's how you I guess that's one way to use it. So.
And I have to put some input. When it comes to the Hoglet series in general, it is actually approved for testing centers. because I had to do a 504 plan for my daughter.
Oh, really?
She has testing coming up, so they said it
Yeah.
has to be quiet fidgets. So I was
Yeah.
like, all right, well, I got a marble maze. They're like, cool. I was like, they're like, you have a what? I was like, you'll see. and they loved it because they didn't realize, they knew not to do the fidget bubble popper because that is going to make noise during the testing center. The fidget chair bands are great, but they can get a little loud. So like we had to look at our stash, and the Hoglet mouse is going to be great for her because she does have to use the computer. The keychain is going to be great as a second or third, choice for a fidget tool. And then she's got her fidget marble maze. So she's bringing both of y'all with her at her testing this year.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, that's so awesome. And yeah, as a former special ed teacher, I've taught so many kids that have different glimmers and different ways to decompress. Like a lot of kids have like the oral fixation where they need to be chewing on something. The good news about these is it is made of food grade silicone, and they're really durable. So I haven't seen anyone really be able to rip these things apart. Same with the Hoglet too. Safe to chew on, and you can also take the cover off and put it in the dishwasher. So it's very durable and safe, easy to clean. As you can see, Angela's taking hers off right there. So yeah, that's another thing. And another thing about just teaching kids is seeing them in different. You mentioned, like, I think Jason mentioned the importance of getting up and moving around, and can't stress enough to. I guess like most teachers know this, but like for newer teachers, that was one big thing I incorporated, is trying to get basically like you are sitting so much as a student, so getting kids up, getting them some time to move around, inventing some fun games in the classroom, like learning games and stuff like that. Getting outside if you can, like having maybe a little bit of class outside, mixing it up a little bit. I think all that stuff is huge. And also incorporating art and music in the curriculum too is a big thing as well.
Yes, I completely agree. We have a comment. Christina said, I have a few huggers and hand games like rock, paper, scissors, and finger plays. Those are big things for her kiddos. She's a SPED teacher. I know I'm probably butchering that, so I'm sorry, but she's a teacher. And then we are also, let's see. Now, do you guys think that Glimmers only apply to the people on the spectrum, or do you feel like anybody and everybody can have a glimmer?
Yeah, I think everybody. I think everybody does. Like, especially with the broad definition it has, right? It's like it again can be I guess like interpreted differently by different people, but in my definition of that, it's like something that makes you feel better, like when you're being triggered. So in my knowledge, like everybody has something that triggers them. Everybody probably has something that helps kind of dampen that trigger or make that trigger go away, make yourself feel better. So yeah, I think everybody, regardless, if they're on the spectrum or wherever they fall, if they're not on the spectrum, I think everybody has glimmers.
Jason, how about you?
I agree. I think it's really just a brief kind of sensory experience that can evoke some kind of emotional response or even memory. So that apply to all human beings across the culture. I feel like maybe people that's on the spectrum can react a little bit more strongly than the neurotypical people do. But I think is a common human experience. not just for United States, but also for other country. So
I completely agree with both of you. I think everyone has triggers in their life, whether they cope with it differently and regulate with it differently, or same thing goes for glimmers. They just probably either don't realize, oh, I just had a glimmer, because trigger is what everyone really focuses on in daily life is, oh, I know not to go there. That's going to be too busy. Oh, I know it's going to be crowded, so I'm going to have anxiety. So I just need to stay away. But instead of staying away from it, the glimmers can help a child or even an adult go through that situation and help them regulate while they're in the moment. So then maybe as they get older, then they could feel more comfortable going into that said environment. Like, oh, I want to go to a concert, but it's going to be too crowded. At least if they bring glimmers that can help ground them and help make them feel safe, say like a weighted product or a fidget tool, then that'll help them feel safe in a loud, environment or crowded environment. So I do feel like it's everybody. It's just some people can handle it a lot better and not have a huge meltdown like others. Christina did another comment. She says, I love you, Christina, by the way. Thank you so much. You have been talking with us back and forth this whole time. It's awesome. She said, I hate it when others trigger my students. So I try to either eliminate them or help them find a glimmer in the tough situation. That is awesome. I completely agree, because of course, as a teacher or a learning coach, I guess you could say, and as a parent, you can have a kid that's fine, but then their sibling comes over and disrupts their world, and then you're like, he was fine. Why'd you walk over there, dear? Why? So,
yeah, Christina sounds like an awesome special education teacher. So thanks so much for commenting. And I totally agree with what you just said too. Like I think any teacher or parent who has worked with a kid who can be easily triggered has had that experience where hey, everything's fine, and then boom, that thing happens. And it's like, I guess like the next thing you can ask yourself is like, do you have the glimmers in your toolbox? Right. That's kind of how I look at glimmers, is like the tools in my toolbox. And hey, if I'm at a like at least for some of these things that we can prepare for, right? Like if I know I'm going to a concert, am I going to be able to bring my dog with me? Probably not. But I can prepare in other ways, right? I can bring, small things to put in my ears, or something to block the sound. I can also, use mental tools to help myself like get away from that spot. So there's a lot of things we can do. And definitely that was a great comment by Christina. Appreciate it.
I completely agree with you. Now that kind of ties into our next question, which is, why is it important to learn about glimmers? So like you said, if you know what your glimmer is, you can prepare, whether it's put it in a backpack or a work bag to take with you. So if something does trigger you, you have that backup toolbox to say, okay, well, I'm just going to take my keychain fidget and I'm just going to sit here and calm down, or what have you. So for you guys, why is it important to learn about glimmers?
I guess I'll start out. I guess like I don't know why I thought of this, but like many years ago, I was a Boy Scout, like a long time ago. And what their motto is, it's always be prepared. I think is the motto. So yeah, I think that's important, right? Like without triggers, you wouldn't know what your glimmers are, and without, I guess, repeated incidences where you're using those glimmers in different situations, which ones are like the go-to, which ones are kind of like secondary, like if this doesn't work, I could try this. I think it's super important to learn about that, and like to be honest with yourself too. Like some glimmers I have, like maybe I don't tell everybody about them, like the fact that I need to fidget and everything. Like I recently become like way more comfortable with that because it's part of my job, like admitting that. But like if I was like a teenager, I probably wouldn't have admitted that actually helps me focus. But now that I'm an adult, I'm not ashamed of that. I know it's nothing to be ashamed of. So I think it's important to be honest with yourself, trigger wise and glimmer wise.
Yeah, I agree. And I make some note before the meeting about, I kind of write down a few things I feel like it might be very important. One thing that Parker already mentioned is really it helps with self-awareness, like understanding how your sense, like how the sensory experience can trigger your own personal emotional response, can help you to become more self-aware and in tune with your own emotion. And by paying attention to like different type of sensory glimmers, people can also gain a little bit more insight into their own thought process, and even some patterns, like what kind of thing usually trigger you more than the other. And the second big reason I feel like is why it's important to learn about sensory glimmers is emotional regulation. And of course, kids on the spectrum or kids with special needs, usually they have more emotional reactions, but it happened to all of us, even to the best of us. It's having some kind of like Parker was saying, like always be prepared, having something in your emotional toolbox that you can use and put you into a positive state. Like I mentioned earlier, is really important, and sensory glimmer can really help individuals who are struggling with regulating their own emotion by recognizing the experience that trigger you a positive emotional response. You can learn how to manage your reactions and cope with difficult feelings in a more effective way. So I feel like that's definitely a really, really important, I guess, life skill that you can learn, and you can use it throughout your career, throughout your life, your schools, or anywhere you go. And especially as entrepreneur like me and Parker, we are constantly bombarded with stress. That's part of entrepreneurship. It's always going to be weird thing happening, people leaving, some drama going on, or things just happen. So I think it's really, really important to have this kind of self-awareness, and also have an emotional toolbox that you can always go back into when you just need that additional like motivation to keep you going so you don't give up. Because I think, I mean, for entrepreneur at least, like you only lose when you give up. Or if you,
Yes.
as long as you can proceed and don't give up on the business. And even for me running this business, Lucky Kid, with everyone in my team, it wasn't a very easy journey. I went through a lot of roller coaster, like up and down. So actually, to like certain stage in my life is so extreme, I was under immense amount of stress. Like one of the personal story I usually like to share to inspire people around me, or at least people that's trying to start a business. The year 2017, when I first started Lucky Kid on top of my day job, my older daughter, got diagnosed with leukemia in the very same year. And in the meantime, I still have a full-time job, 40 hours, and I was trying to work on my startup, 20 hours, maybe 30 hours, and I'm trying to deal with the cancer treatment with my daughter, and my son have special needs, and my wife is also pregnant with our youngest at the time. Can you imagine all the different trigger that's happening all at the same time? It was just crazy. I couldn't like recalling, or at least like looking it back. I don't know how I survived, but I did. I did survive. I'm still here talking to you guys. But looking back, it's just a lot of things going on. And if I have some of those like sensory glimmers or different like emotional toolbox that I know back then, that could really help me to overcome some of those obstacles and some of those like huge emotional struggle that I was having back in 2017. So
Definitely agree with both of y'all. Like with me, you can have all the tools that you could possibly ever buy, in the world. But if those tools don't work specifically for a child or a person, you just got a big toolbox. At least if you know what your glimmers are and what triggers you, then you can say, all right, well, I'm overwhelmed with all the yelling. How do we get it to stop? Well, because say I'm in my house, because the kids can get loud. We're in a very, very small house, so I mean, you hear it all. You can be in one side of the house and you can still hear them, like they're right in the same room with you. So what I do is I have to calm everyone down without making myself get worked up, because if I'm yelling again, over their talking, then it's just, we're going nowhere. So as a parent, my trigger would be loud noises. So I have to figure out how to self-regulate myself before I can fix the situation, because the kids are not the ones that are going to fix the situation. And as me being the parent and the adult, and I'm the one having the situation, I can't really just have a breakdown in the middle of the corner. And then my kids are like, what are you doing? So like, at least I know music helps soothe me. So I can put on I can put on one of my favorite songs, or I can just put on the Just Dance, and the kids will be quiet because they're like, oh, I hear music, what's going on? And then they'll stop yelling and fighting with each other because they're like, let me go see what's going on. So for me as an adult, that's one example I have. And then with my kids, like I can give my son a I can have my son, my 6-year-old, he could play bubbles all day long and he doesn't get as much enjoyment as the 2-year-old, or even like, you know. And then with my 11-year-old, she loves to draw. So she'll just zoom out and just zen, just drawing unicorns and creating things and making things out of nothing. Like, she is so artistic, like you have no idea. She's going to go places with that one because she's self-taught. Now she wants to learn how to play the piano. So now that's another glimmer that I'm hoping that works with her, because it's music. She's learning a new instrument, and then that can help her pour her emotions out into the world and be able to express herself in a more healthy manner than, say, having her meltdowns and her tantrums, or whatever her situation might be at that time. Because the 11-year-old, she talks like she's going to be 18 tomorrow, you know. She's already there. She's got that sass and frass. Our next question is going to be, how can Glimmers help kids and adults on the spectrum? I know we've been talking about this, but is there anything else you guys might have in your toolboxes, or any more tips for Glimmers and how they can help?
You know, one thing that just popped into my head, like when you guys are talking about some of the struggles, especially, you know, Jason 2017, like I would use like you know, like, hey, as an adult, if you get through that, you can get through anything. So like whatever glimmers you use during that time, like that's what I would fall back on. Like during like some of the hard times I've had as well, like starting Hedgehog Health. You know, I've definitely, I can also agree with what Jason said earlier. You know, as an entrepreneur starting your business, there's so many ups and downs, highs and lows, and you know, every day is like totally different. And you got to be able to like kind of stay in even keel. And when you are down bad and when you're really triggered, you have to go to that go-to glimmer. So yeah, like I guess like just, you know, a good way to know if you're not totally sure what your glimmers are, like you can, for me, it's like sometimes think back, like what did I do when I was faced with the situation? Like what was like my next step before I really like looked into inwardly and thought about like my glimmers before that was like a thing, before I read the article. That's kind of what I would do when I was having a tough time, just kind of look back. What did I do during this time? I know if I've survived this long, I can get through this other obstacle.
Yeah, and for me, I think a few other way that you can also think about how it help is, of course, we kind of mentioned about the emotional regulation already, and you can also use it as like a coping strategy. Really, we kind of also talk about that from a different perspective. But like sensory glimmer can help individual, not just people on the spectrum, but just neurotypical people as well, to use it as a coping strategy to managing like stress and will manage different life situation. If you know what kind of, like, for example, everyone was mentioning about music earlier, like what kind of music that you can listen to that just put you into a calm stage, or some kind of like, you know, like essential oil that we also mentioned earlier in today's conversation that can trigger you or give you that's your glimmer that can relax you and put you into a very different emotional state. I feel that that's really important. And the other good way of using sensory glimmer is you can also help with like memories and even communications. It can be a helpful tool for the people that's struggling, especially a lot of the people or kids on the spectrum that they are struggling with communication or social interactions. By recognizing some of the sensory experience that trigger like a positive emotional response, you can share, or you can encourage your kids to share some of those experiences with others and engage in a more meaningful relationship with people around you as well. So
Very awesome. I completely agree with you guys. Christina has a comment. Let's see. It says, I struggle with meltdowns when people are toxic. I am right there with you. You definitely, you know, got to weed out the toxic people that you surround yourself with so you have less stress in your life and less meltdowns. I completely agree. Our next question is going to be, how can Glimmers help those who work and live with people on the spectrum? So I guess this is more for the parents and the teachers. What can they do to help with the people that they work and live with on the spectrum.
Jason, you want to take this one?
I think for me, is the most important part is to create a supportive environment, because we can, like, finding the glimmers and different sensory tool is important, but you also need to create a supportive environment that promote the well-being and the success of that individuals. And by recognizing different kind of emotional or sensory responses with different kind of sensory trigger, I feel like not just the parent, the caregiver, and also the educator can help create an environment that's tailored to the individual sensory needs and preferences. That kind of went back to our previous, I think, couple of weeks ago. We have a whole discussion about countdown corner, and that is a supportive environment that you can use when your kids or even yourself is in the certain emotional stage, that you can just go to that countdown corner or go into that environment that can instantly help you to calm down. So that is a great way for people that is working or live with someone on the spectrum to help support them to, of course, now you know all this trigger. How can you create a supportive environment that people or the kids can go into like almost right away if they need that emotional regulation, or they need that additional help to cope with their emotion, because sometimes they could, like Angela was saying, have a meltdown in the house setting, and sometimes it's triggered by the siblings, which happened a lot in my house as well. We have 3 kids; they are always triggering each other all the time, especially the 2 girls. They are always triggering each other all the time. When one finally calm down and someone's gonna do something to the others, and then the whole thing we continue again, and that's just live. I think a lot of family might also related to that. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say, like, as a teacher coming at this question, I think the better you know your students, your kiddos, the better you're able to address um, triggers and have the correct glimmers, that toolkit, as we kind of spoke about before, right? Like, um, first day of school, before I knew any of my students, I would definitely, obviously do all the research beforehand, talk to teachers, but of course you're gonna get some new kids out of nowhere, and that's happened to me as well, where it's just like you kind of have to be prepared with everything. Um, and of course it helps to have a little bit of experience, like the first year of being a teacher. You're not gonna know all these like cool go-to glimmers, and I'm a lifelong educator, and I work in the field of creating devices that kind of like that help soothe learners, and I'm still learning. I'm trying to learn every day about, like, what's a cool new way to help this kiddo, or you know and you really have to think about the way that everyone learns differently. It kind of goes back to the reason I made the Hoglet in the first place, is the fact that as a teacher, I saw um, all the different ways that students learn. Like, no one learns the same way, and just kind of be prepared, have multi-sensory lessons, and all the tools needed, that we spoke about earlier. So
Yeah.
Great information, guys. We have another comment. It says, Facebook user. It says, finding the glimmer that works for the person on the spectrum and making sure that the person has full accessibility to these glimmers to help self-regulate. That is perfect. Perfect saying. Yes, I completely agree with you. With me, I feel like like if you know what your child's if you know that your child has certain things that help them better, then it's nice to know what, plan A and plan B. Okay, well, if this doesn't work, I got plan B back here. All right, now this doesn't work, so let me go over here to plan C. It's good to have different things to try. And if you know something works with your kid, always keep that in your back pocket, because then you don't have to worry, because you at least know, okay, well, I at least have this. So if, say, my son has a meltdown in the car, at least I have his weighted neck pillow, or at least I have a fidget marble maze at the restaurant. because his cell phone died, so he can't play his Minecraft video games on his phone. So what are we gonna do? Give him something, you know. And like with my daughter, the same things my daughter uses does not necessarily, my son doesn't get that same reaction as much as it would her. So it's completely different, and it really doesn't, you know, with, you need to know your kid, and you need to know what works for them and what doesn't to make this successful.
Oh, and oh, sorry, can I throw one last thing?
Sure.
As a teacher too, I think all teachers would agree. Parents, hey, tell the teachers ahead of time, like let them know. Any intel is definitely appreciated. So, like as a teacher, I would love to hear, you know, before the year starts, you know, if there are certain what is a trigger, what's a glimmer for each kiddo, right? That'd be a super helpful thing for me to know as an educator. Because like, you know, you don't want to find out the hard way. It's easier to know ahead of time, so everyone's prepared. And like we said, like you come set with that toolbox that we keep talking about. So
I completely agree, and that was a good statement, because like as a parent, if you like, I have them at home and they do virtual learning, so I am their learning coach, but their teacher knows that, like my son's teacher who's 6, she's like, what is he bouncing on? I was like, oh, it's a balance ball, is that okay? She was like, what do you mean a balance ball? So I explained to her what it was. And so she was like, oh, yeah, that's fine. I can tell he's paying attention in the class connect, because he's sitting there and he's staring at the screen, and he's not getting up, walking around, you know, playing with a toy while he's supposed to be sitting in class. So that's one thing that I know works for him. But of course, can you bring that ball in that teacher class setting, and would the teacher approve it? Because that would be something, like as a parent, you want to bring those tools that you use at home to the teacher and see what's approved, so then your child can have it in their school toolbox. So the teacher might not give the child full access to it, but she at least will say put it in her desk. So when she notices, okay, my student is now starting to show fidgets, you know, and they're getting up and not doing what they want. Like my daughter, if she didn't want to take that test and she was in brick and mortar, she'd go hide and read a book. And you can't get mad at a child for wanting to read, but like, come on, girl, sit down and get your test done. So, I mean, with her, flexible seating would have been perfect. Like if I had tools to give that teacher, she probably would have done a lot better in school. Instead of having all the behavioral issues she did have when she was in brick and mortar. So I completely agree with you about that. And Christina says, I absolutely love it. So she agrees. All right, everyone. Well, thank you, Jason and Parker, for joining me today and learning a lot from our conversation. Ooh, we have another one. Facebook user says, tools and toys and spaces are wonderful, but it will also be wonderful if we are our kids and students. I wish, yes, I wish I could be happy just by smiling and being like, hi, babies. No, like, go in me.
Yeah, that's a wonderful comment to wrap up. Yeah. So, and just a reminder, this entire month, for those of you who want to win some product from us, we're doing a Autism Awareness giveaway for the month of April. You can find out more about our giveaway at luckykid.com/giveaway. And actually, you can potentially also win some of Hedgehog's products, since they are also one of our partner in the giveaway this month. And this is all the product you can potentially win, including our fidget bubble pop, the marble maze, and also the hedgehog keychain that was mentioning during the conversation earlier, and also the handy scenes arm weight, handy riders, hand weight. Pretty much you can get almost an entire countdown corner even with a book. We're also giving away children's books. And the books is about emotional regulation, actually, and also giving away the Hedgehog fidget computer mouse, and also giving away our weighted animal lap pad, our writable weighted lap pad, even a weighted blanket as well. So we're giving tons and tons of product away. So if you haven't signed up for the giveaway, please feel free to do so. You still have a few weeks until the end of this month to join.
Yes, we will be doing a drawing every Friday around 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Times. It'll be the drawing will be announced tomorrow, and we are doing one every single Friday. So we have 3 more chances for you to win. So please sign up if you haven't already. Share that link with all your friends and family and spread the joy, because this literally is like a whole startup for a calming corner. This is a sensory toolbox kit right here at your disposal. It is about $450 plus worth of products. So you get a huge bundle. This is like one of our biggest giveaways. But of course, it's Autism Awareness Month. So of course, we got to go big and go home. And Jason and Parker both are go big or go home people. So we had to do this.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I hope our parents, therapists, and teachers are paying attention, because I know for sure learning our kids' glimmers will really help us help them be better. Thank you for joining me today, Parker and Jason. That'll be it for today's episode. Thank you all again for joining us. We really appreciate everybody who's commented. We love talking with you guys and learning about our viewers. This has been Sensory Deal Live. We will see you next week with another Deals Filled Thursday. Bye, guys.
Thank you.